Hello, everyone. Welcome back to PamTen's YouTube channel. And in today's session, we'll be solving a recursion based problem which goes by the name of generate parenthesis. We are using LeetCode, which is the most used platform for practicing data structures and algorithms. And this is the problem that we're trying to solve. So given n pairs of parentheses, write a function to generate all combinations of well-formed parentheses. So given n pairs of parentheses. So if n is equal to 1, you have one pair. If n equals 2, you shall have two pairs of parentheses. So this could be either this or this. So similarly, if n equals 3, these are the parentheses you shall have. So the length of the parenthesis will be n into 2 or 2n, right? So if n is equal to 1, so you'll have 2 over here. If n is equal to 2, you'll have 4 over here. If n is equal to 3, the length of the parenthesis will be 6 over here. So this is the basic gist of it, and we'd have to generate all combinations of parentheses. So we'll understand this through an example. So let's take n equals 2. Now for this, we'll have two parentheses, this and this. Now for any of these parentheses, we basically have two options. So we'll have you have four places, and at each of these four places, you either take the opening bracket or you take the closing bracket. Also here, another thing to keep in mind is at the first position, you can only take the opening bracket because only in that case your parenthesis will be valid. So if you keep a closing brace at the starting position, your parenthesis will become invalid. Now, another thing to keep in mind is here, let's say if I have three opening braces. So here, if your number of opening braces cross the length of n. So here I have opening brace, and opening brace. Even in that case, your parenthesis will become invalid because for valid parenthesis, you need equal number of opening and closing braces. So these are some things which you need to keep in mind. And now, so if you have two, so this is one case. I can also go ahead and remove one of this over here. So here, the total number. So total number of opening is 2, total number of closing is 2. And when you add up both of them, it becomes 4. So total number of opening braces plus total number of closing braces should equal to 2n. So these are some of the things you need to keep in mind. Now let's go ahead and solve this using recursion. So I will create a method and give it a name called as generator. I'll just give it an index so that I can keep iterating and then I'll need a string so that I can keep adding these braces. So I'll keep it as s. I need to keep the count of opening brackets and I also need to keep the count of closing brackets. Then I would need to store this in a result. So basically this is a list or an array and all of these generated parentheses I need to store in something, and here I've taken result. And then I would need to take the n over here. So these are all of the parameters, and since this is also part of a class, I've already taken self. Okay, so that would do the job. And now here I'll start off by taking the condition if opening is greater than n. So here again we'll take the same case over here. So let me give up space over here, right? So if all of these are filled up with opening braces and your n equals 2, then this would be invalid. So we shall just return from this statement if this is the condition. Now, on the other hand, it will be valid if number of opening plus closing is equal to 2n and number of opening braces should also be equal to number of closing braces. So this is the condition when you can actually go ahead and add your resultant parenthesis or your generated parenthesis. So I'll say result dot append and your generated parenthesis will be stored in S. And then this is where your recursion part kicks in. Here, since again this is part of a class, I'll use self dot generator. Inside this, I'll increase the value of index I plus 1. And so initially what is happening is I shall have, let's say I have a blank. Now I increment the index, and first time what I do is I basically add the opening brace, right? So this is what I'm basically doing over here. Then your closing over here remains 0, result is the same, and n. So I'll actually show you how this recursion works. So here, this is what I'll take in the first position, opening. Now, for the second position, I shall have either, so I can either do this or this. So in the second position, I can either take a closing brace or I can again take an opening brace. Let me give in some space over here. Again, for this, I'll have two conditions. So the first condition is where, so here, opening, closing, and then at the third position, I'll again take opening. So now, another case will be, I'll have opening, closing, and then I'll have closing. So here, in this case, till here, it is okay because you have opening, closing, and opening. But here, your closing becomes more than opening, and that is why this would be invalid. Again, we can basically take the same for your right recursion side as well. So this is the basic logic of how your recursion will work. So we'll increment the index and then we'll basically add the opening place over here, and your opening value will increase by 1. So the number of braces in opening increases by 1. And here is where you check if actually opening is greater than closing. And only if this is true, that is when you shall go ahead and add the closing brace. So your index increments by 1. And here you shall add the closing brace. Your opening remains the same, but your closing increments by 1, result, and n. And all of this we need to call from this main function that we were given over here. So I shall call this generator function from here, self dot generator. Index value, I shall give this as 0. S initially will be an empty string. Number of opening brackets initially will be 0. Number of closing brackets initially will be 0. Your result, so let's actually create a array over here, and then we'll just give it a blank list. We'll pass result as it is, and then we have the value of n. Now, what will happen is, from this generate parenthesis method, we are invoking this generator method, and then we'll get the final result in this. So return of result, and then let's run this and let's see what do we get if we pass the test cases or not. Okay, so this seems to be in line number 16. So let's check line number 16, pure. So here I need to give in, so basically this is condition checking. So if I just say opening equals closing, then I'm basically assigning the value of closing in opening. But that is not what I want to do here. I'll run this again. So here again, we seem to have an issue. Okay, let's try to debug this. So if opening is greater than n, we return. If that is not the case, let me actually put this in another brace over here, put this inside this. So opening is equal to closing, and this is equal to this. We say result.append is this. And then self.generator, I plus 1. So this is opening, opening plus 1. Okay, so this seems to be fine. Now let's run this. So in our output statement, we only seem to have all the closing braces. We are not getting any of the opening braces. So that gives us a hint of what is wrong in this. If opening is greater than closing, only then we add a closing statement, okay, which is correct because we need the opening to be greater than our closing statement. Then so you have your index, your string, opening, closing, result, and n. Let's actually vary this in here first. Let's keep this and then let's change this. Let's add it here. Again, the same error. So index is 0. Initially, we have an empty string. The index shouldn't matter. Let's say if we keep it as 1, that really shouldn't make a difference here. Yes, it does not make a difference. Are we actually appending the value? So result of S, opening plus 1, closing, opening, closing plus 1. Right, so this is the issue over here. So this basically here we need to add this to the original string, and also here we need to add this to the original string. So here what is happening is, now whenever this case is true, here we're just adding this, but here there is nothing to check this. So basically we are supposed to add this to the original string. Now let's run this. And you see, we have successfully submitted this. So this was the solution of generate parenthesis, and this was solved using recursion. If you've liked this video, do hit the like button, do also subscribe to our channel, and make sure that you keep visiting our channel. Thank you. I'll meet you in the next one.